For every iconic WrestleMania that gave us unforgettable moments, there's one that made you question why you even watch wrestling in the first place. Kicking off our list is the absolute clown show from 2011, WrestleMania 27 from the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. With names like The Rock, John Cena, The Undertaker, Triple H, Edge, CM Punk, and Randy Orton appearing on the show, you'd expect a Mania that would be at least halfway decent. Unfortunately, what we got was a total mess that left fans feeling empty. The show's biggest problem was the mediocre build. The main event itself felt like an afterthought, with The Miz playing the role of a third wheel while being the champion. To make things worse, the match first ended in a double countout and had to be restarted by The Rock. When Rocky laid out Cena with the rock bottom, allowing Miz to retain, it felt less like a shocking twist and more like WWE prioritizing next year's WrestleMania over the current one. In the undercard, Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler somehow got nearly 15 minutes and was positioned in the middle of the card. Even with Stone Cold as the special referee, this bout dragged the entire show's momentum to a halt. Snooki from Jersey Shore was in the ring for some reason, Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus got moved to the pre-show, and Edge retained the big gold against Alberto Del Rio. The only saving grace was Triple H and Undertaker delivering a brutal encounter, but one great match couldn't salvage an otherwise forgettable night. Fortunately, WWE learned from their mistakes and delivered a redemption story exactly 1 year later with WrestleMania 28. Taking place at the Sun Life Stadium in Miami, Mania 28 captured the real essence of what makes WrestleMania special. The entire event was built around once in a lifetime, John Cena versus The Rock in a dream match, a year in the making. Two of the biggest stars in WWE history going one-on-one in the main event was enough to make it one of the biggest shows ever. However, the rest of the card was equally strong. The Undertaker and Triple H battled inside Hell in a Cell, with Shawn Michaels as the special referee. The end of the era match was perfect from the starting bell, and the emotional storytelling between these three legends elevated their match to the next level. CM Punk versus Chris Jericho for the WWE Championship was decent, while Daniel Bryan and Sheamus opened the show with a controversial finish that ironically launched Bryan's trajectory towards superstardom. But when it's all said and done, the grandeur and scope of Mania 28 cemented it as one of the most important shows in WWE history. While the 2012 version of WrestleMania had a solid build that started over a year ago, let's talk about one of the best WrestleManias of all time that had an absolutely horrible build. WrestleMania 31 proved that even the worst build-up can't stop a show from becoming legendary when the performers deliver. The 2015 event from Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara had fans genuinely concerned heading in. Daniel Bryan was shoved into the Intercontinental title picture instead of the main event, the Sting versus Triple H feud felt underwhelming, and Roman Reigns was being pushed down everyone's throats despite the crowd's vocal rejection. But what happened on the night of the show shocked everyone as nearly every match over-delivered. The Intercontinental title ladder match was a car crash in the best way possible. Randy Orton hit the greatest RKO in WrestleMania history on Seth Rollins mid-air. The Undertaker made his return and had a solid match against Bray Wyatt. Sting versus Triple H was heavy on nostalgia of the Monday Night Wars. Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns had a violent slugfest that felt worthy of the main event stage. Even the celebrity involvement worked, with Ronda Rousey's appearance alongside The Rock generating legitimate mainstream attention. But the moment that made this WrestleMania immortal came when Seth Rollins' music hit. Rollins' Money in the Bank cash-in remains the greatest heist in wrestling history, as he stole the WWE Championship from both Reigns and Lesnar in one fell swoop. WrestleMania 31 is the ultimate proof that sometimes the best moments are the ones nobody sees coming. But after witnessing how WWE can salvage a show with poor build-up like WrestleMania 31, WrestleMania 9 demonstrates what happens when everything goes wrong. Taking place in the parking lot of Caesars Palace in Las Vegas, the 1993 event is consistently ranked among the absolute worst in company history, and for good reason. Giant Gonzalez versus The Undertaker is often cited as the worst match in Taker's WrestleMania career, featuring a nearly 8-foot-tall performer in a muscle suit that looked ridiculous even by 1993 standards. The match ended in disqualification when Gonzalez used chloroform, because apparently that's what passed for creativity in 1993. However, nothing damaged WrestleMania 9 more than its ending. After Yokozuna defeated Bret Hart to win the WWF Championship, Hulk Hogan swooped in for an impromptu match and won the title in under a minute. This short-sighted decision derailed Bret's momentum as the Hulkster once again abused his booking power to make himself look strong. But 20 years after that disaster, WWE proved they still hadn't learned their lesson about disappointing WrestleMania main events with 2013's show from MetLife Stadium. WrestleMania 29's rematch between Cena and The Rock failed to capture the magic of the prequel, feeling more like an obligation than a dream match. The undercard ranged from forgettable to actively bad. Alberto Del Rio versus Jack Swagger for the World Heavyweight Championship had zero heat. Triple H and Brock Lesnar delivered a decent no-holds-barred match. The semi-main event saw CM Punk challenge The Undertaker's streak in the match of the night. But in similar fashion to WrestleMania 27, one great match couldn't save a mediocre show. The end product was a card that felt like it belonged on a B-tier pay-per-view instead of the biggest show of the year. However, 6 years before this disaster, WWE had shown that they could still deliver a complete WrestleMania experience with 2007's event from Ford Field in Detroit. WrestleMania 23 marked a significant moment as the show appealed to both hardcore fans as well as casual mainstream audience. The main event between John Cena and Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship was a masterpiece that showcased both men at their peak. Michaels proved he could still steal the show even in defeat, while Cena's victory solidified him as the company's top star. Plus, he had a super cool entrance. The Undertaker versus Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship was equally impressive, featuring two powerhouses delivering a hard-hitting encounter. Donald Trump versus Vince McMahon in the Battle of the Billionaires drew massive mainstream attention. The Money in the Bank ladder match delivered its usual chaos, and the entire show felt worthy of the grandest stage. WrestleMania 23 proved that when WWE combines star power with solid wrestling and smart booking, you get something special. However, WrestleMania 32 showed exactly what happens when you completely butcher this formula. The 2016 event from AT&T Stadium in Dallas boasted a record-breaking attendance of over 100,000 fans, yet WWE somehow managed to disappoint nearly all of them. The main event between Roman Reigns and Triple H for the WWE Championship was a slow, plodding affair that stretched nearly 30 minutes without ever finding its rhythm. When Roman finally won, the arena erupted in boos rather than celebration. The undercard was equally frustrating, with Brock Lesnar versus Dean Ambrose being shockingly tame. The Undertaker and Shane McMahon's Hell in a Cell match dragged on for half an hour, with Shane's leap from the top of the cell being the only memorable moment in an otherwise forgettable match. Charlotte won the Women's Championship and made history, while AJ Styles losing to Chris Jericho in his WrestleMania debut was baffling. The only bright spot came in the opening Intercontinental title ladder match, where Zack Ryder's emotional victory gave fans something to cheer about. In stark contrast to Mania 32's disappointment, WrestleMania 19 from Seattle proved that quality wrestling combined with star power creates timeless entertainment. The 2003 edition of Mania is consistently ranked among the greatest WrestleManias ever, and for good reason. The main event between Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle for the WWE Championship showcased two of the best athletes in company history. Despite Lesnar nearly ending his career with a botched shooting star press, both men recovered to deliver a fitting conclusion that crowned Lesnar as the company's next unstoppable force. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock in their third and final WrestleMania encounter was the perfect send-off for the Texas Rattlesnake. Shawn Michaels and Chris Jericho worked a technical masterclass that reminded everyone why HBK was Mr. WrestleMania, while Hulk Hogan versus Vince McMahon was a surprisingly brutal street fight. WrestleMania 19 understood the assignment and featured the perfect blend of new stars and established legends to deliver a classic that still holds up over 2 decades later. 2 decades after that classic, WrestleMania 40 followed the same formula and proved that modern WWE could still capture that same magic while creating new stars. The 2-night event from Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia delivered on nearly every promise, with Cody Rhodes finally finishing his story. Night 1 featured The Rock returning as the final boss to team with Roman Reigns against Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins in a Bloodline Rules tag match. Rhea Ripley versus Becky Lynch for the Women's World Championship was a hard-hitting encounter, while Sami Zayn dethroning Gunther gave us a genuine feel-good moment. However, it was the finale of Night 2 that stole the entire show. Cody Rhodes' victory over Roman Reigns to win the undisputed WWE Championship was the perfect payoff to a 3-year journey. The cameos from legends like Cena and The Undertaker and the post-match celebration with virtually every babyface on the roster felt like the Avengers Endgame of pro wrestling. WrestleMania 40 succeeded because WWE committed to their stories and delivered the endings fans desperately wanted. But in stark contrast, WrestleMania 11 serves as a painful reminder of what happens when the company completely ignores its core audience in a desperate attempt to generate mainstream attention. The 1995 edition of Mania from the Hartford Civic Center is widely considered the worst WrestleMania of all time, and that reputation is completely justified. WWE's decision to have NFL linebacker Lawrence Taylor main event against Bam Bam Bigelow was a slap in the face to actual wrestlers. This decision particularly stung because Diesel versus Shawn Michaels for the WWE Championship was treated like an afterthought despite being a genuinely good match. The rest of the card was equally dismal. Bret Hart's match against Bob Backlund was so bad that Hart himself called it one of the worst matches of his career. The Undertaker versus King Kong Bundy went nowhere, while the tag team matches were equally forgettable. The horrible booking of Mania 11 encapsulated everything wrong with WWE's mid-90s creative direction. Fortunately, exactly 10 years later, WWE proved they'd learned from those mistakes by delivering one of the most historically significant WrestleManias ever. WrestleMania 21 from the Staples Center in Los Angeles featured a massive changing of the guard, with two new champions being crowned to lead the company into a new era. John Cena defeated JBL to win his first WWE Championship, while Batista destroyed Triple H to capture the World Heavyweight Championship. However, what truly elevates this show is its absolutely stacked undercard and midcard. Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle is legitimately one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever, featuring two of the best workers in history going hold for hold in a technical masterpiece. The first ever Money in the Bank ladder match was revolutionary, introducing a concept that would become a WrestleMania staple. The Undertaker versus Randy Orton was another classic, and Rey Mysterio versus Eddie Guerrero was the perfect opener. WrestleMania 21 succeeded because WWE trusted its roster to deliver while simultaneously building for the future. In contrast, WrestleMania 13 from Chicago demonstrates how one legendary match can't save a disaster. The 1997 edition of WrestleMania is exclusively remembered for one thing: Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin in a submission match that revolutionized WWE storytelling. Unfortunately, everything else on the card ranged from mediocre to outright terrible. The main event between The Undertaker and Psycho Sid for the WWE Championship was boring and had the crowd sitting in complete silence. The Rock, before he was The Rock, faced Rikishi before he was Rikishi. The tag team division was represented by ridiculous matches, and the show's pacing was completely off. However, if you thought Mania 13 was bad, WrestleMania 2 in 1986 proved that splitting your biggest show across 3 different cities is a recipe for absolute disaster. WrestleMania 2 took place simultaneously in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, an ambitious concept that sounds interesting on paper but created a logistical nightmare in execution. The New York portion featured a boxing match between Mr. T and Roddy Piper that dragged on forever. Chicago hosted a battle royal featuring NFL players alongside WWE wrestlers, while Los Angeles got Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy in a steel cage match. The experiment was never repeated for very good reason, but for every blunder like WrestleMania 2, you get one fun show like Mania 24 that restores your faith in wrestling. WrestleMania 24 from Orlando is criminally underrated, despite delivering a nearly flawless card from top to bottom. The main event between Edge and The Undertaker for the World Heavyweight Championship was a masterclass in storytelling. The WWE Championship triple threat between John Cena, Triple H, and Randy Orton was unpredictable, while Batista versus Umaga was a battle of powerhouses. However, the show's most emotional moment came when Ric Flair faced Shawn Michaels in a career-threatening match. The sight of HBK apologizing to Flair before delivering the final sweet chin music remains one of WrestleMania's most iconic moments. The celebrity involvement with Floyd Mayweather defeating Big Show was entertaining, while Money in the Bank delivered its usual chaos, with CM Punk's victory launching him toward main event status. In contrast to the brilliance of Mania 24, WrestleMania 41 from Las Vegas demonstrated how even the most stacked card can collapse under poor execution and backwards booking. WrestleMania 41 in 2025 was supposed to be epic, but instead it was filled with creative decisions that left everyone scratching their heads. The ending of Night 1 shocked everyone with Paul Heyman aligning with Seth Rollins. However, the rest of the card was mediocre at best. Gunther tapping out to Jey Uso was baffling. Charlotte broke Tiffany's tooth, and the tag title bout put people to sleep. While the show featured some returns and surprises, but the main event ending with Travis Scott's involvement represented everything wrong with Triple H's booking of the product. The show has potential, it had scope, but the soul of WrestleMania was sacrificed for short-term mainstream attention and a viral moment. However, for every disappointing modern WrestleMania, there exists the gold standard that all others are measured against. The 2001 edition of WrestleMania is not just the greatest WrestleMania ever produced, but arguably the greatest wrestling pay-per-view in history. The hardcore triple threat between Raven, Kane, and Big Show was chaotic fun. Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit put on a technical masterpiece. The TLC match between the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian redefined the tag division. Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon's street fight gave fans the violence they craved. Triple H versus The Undertaker was fun, but the main event between Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock was peak Attitude Era perfection. The match itself was incredible, but Austin's heel turn and shaking hands with Vince McMahon created one of the most shocking images in wrestling history. Whether you loved or hated the decision, you couldn't deny its impact. The show had something for every type of wrestling fan. Every storyline paid off, every match mattered, and the show created moments that fans still remember 2 decades later, with many fans considering it the best WWE pay-per-view of all time. Speaking of pay-per-views, check out this video next about the most loved and most hated WWE pay-per-views.